All right. Welcome, everybody. We're here to talk about OmniStudio, the right tool for the job, unless it's not. Our presenter here today is Reid Brownell. He is the Enterprise Salesforce Lead at the University of Oklahoma, where he's spearheading the integration of advanced tools like OmniStudio and document generation to optimize Salesforce solutions. His role involves collaborating with stakeholders to maximize the value of their Salesforce platforms and implementing best practices across legacy Salesforce systems on campus for consistency. As a member of the Higher Education Advisory Council and a co-leader of the Salesforce Higher Education User Group alongside Kathy Lukeman. Thank you, Reid.
No problem. So thank you for the introduction, Brian. And like Brian said, we're going to be talking about OmniStudio, but let's level set because looking at the poll, there's some of us that aren't familiar with it. So what is OmniStudio? We're also going to look at some new UI changes that Salesforce added in for the designers. Then we'll do a little bit of talking about some good use cases, maybe some not so good ones, and then lessons learned. So what is OmniStudio? OmniStudio is a set of configuration-first tools that enables designers and developers to create a branded guided experience. And that's important because that means that you can make sure that what your constituents or your coworkers are experiencing is the same no matter where they are on the platform. It's made up of 3 layers. There's the digital experience layer. So that's going to be your flex cards and your OmniScripts. Then it's going to have the service management layer. That'll be your integration procedures, your data mappers. And then there's the developer experience, IDX build tool and the IDX workbench. We won't necessarily cover those, and those aren't as important now and going forward because Salesforce has streamlined the way that OmniStudio is interacted with on the platform. So you don't need to use third-party tools to move between environments. Your gear sets, your Capados are able to move OmniStudio records, whereas previously they couldn't, and that's why that experience exists. So let's look at what the new UI of a flex card looks like. So what a flex card is it allows you to display contextual information kind of at a glance. It's viewable on any device and channel, and it can display data from multiple sources. So if you needed to have a flex card on a contact record, but you also wanted information to present on there that wasn't directly related, you could use a flex card to have both of those show. You can also embed flex cards in OmniScripts, and more on that later, but it really allows you to open up what your user will be interacting with and making sure that it makes sense to them. Next, we're looking at an OmniScript. So this is the new UI of the OmniScripts. I will say, I think OmniScripts are the closest to, frequently people will ask me, should we use Flow or should we use OmniScripts? And that's because an OmniScript is kind of like a flow that you can make pretty. And so my answer to that question is, it depends on what you need it to do. If you just need something really simple and it actually doesn't matter what it looks like, it might make sense to use a flow. But if style matters, if presentation matters, and it is going to utilize flex cards, I think an OmniScript makes the most sense. It also allows you to embed other OmniScripts within it. Same with flows. So if you had a complex OmniScript, it could be made of modularized components that really lets you separated out so you don't have an extremely long OmniScript that is incredibly complex and difficult to understand and support. You can also, as you'll see on the screen, utilize SEO in Google Analytics to track how long it's taking. So you can really optimize your processes and solve the issues that your users are having. Excuse me. Now, here is the first of the service element, the data mappers. Previously known as Data Raptor. So if you hear me call it that, just know that's the better name, and we don't need them renaming stuff. Data mappers are the data extraction, transform, and load tool within OmniStudio. There are 4 types of data mappers. There are load, transform, extract, and then there's a data mapper turbo. Load is exactly what it sounds like. You're loading records. Transform, same. You're transforming the object or the structure of the data. You can change the names, anything like that. Extract, you're pulling it out. Turbo is interesting. Turbo is effectively the same thing as a Data Raptor extract. The only difference is that you can only work with a single object. Now you might ask, why would you want that if you can work with one that is multiple objects? Performance. If you only need to load from one object, it doesn't make sense to go more complex than you need. So using a turbo allows your tool, your flex card, whatever you're using this with, to be more performant and to return those results faster. Because at the end of the day, what users want, what we want as either the people building the tools or those using them, is performance and usability. I don't want to have to click on my page and I know this is going to sound short, but wait 3 seconds for it to load. So there is a good use case for Turbo. Something else that you might see, it's kind of hard to see, formula. You can use formulas within the data mappers. So you can actually get in there and create formulas to derive data that doesn't otherwise exist in your org. It's incredibly strong. And something else for the more development-minded, you can create your own formulas or you can create your own functions. And the reason that's important is because that means that if there isn't a function to do a very specific thing, out of the box, you can write a custom function in Apex and then reference it in the formula. So you can have your development team create a custom function for you that does a very specific thing to return a piece of data, and then reference that within a data mapper to really hone in on the data that you're getting back and the data you're spitting out to the screen. And so I think that really just kind of goes to the next one, which is integration procedures. Integration procedures are declarative server-side processing, but they're more than that. They allow you to take multiple actions with a single server trigger. So let's say you have multiple data mappers and you want to take data from the first one and then use that data and grab all records that have that data as a lookup and then do something with those records. You would do that in an integration procedure. So as an example, let's say you're building out a transcript. You say, okay, I need to get this person. That's your first data mapper. And then you say, I need to get all of the semesters that this person was here. Cool. That's your second data mapper. Your third one is going to be, now I need to take all the semesters that they were here. And for each semester, grab all of the classes related to that semester so that they are grouped together. And you would do that in an integration procedure. Along with that, and I think this is one of its strongest points, is integration procedures can make outside calls. They can make third-party API calls. So let's say you had another system, an SIS that's off of Salesforce, a banner or a PeopleSoft that you're still supporting. And if that banner or the PeopleSoft had an API endpoint that you could call, you could use an integration procedure to access that data and then just surface it in Salesforce, not even make it persistent. That way, it's always up-to-date data, and you're interacting with the data where the data lives instead of moving it into your org and potentially letting it become stale, depending on how often you want to update it. And I think for most of us that aren't going SIS right now in Salesforce, I think that's one of the strongest use cases, is you no longer have to duplicate data across 3 systems to make it usable. You don't have to. You can just get it in real time. And another strength of that is if you're using an integration procedure with a flex card, then it really enables your student success teams to have a flex card on their like the contact or a student, depending on if you're in EDA, Education Cloud, or whatnot, that shows relevant information to that student, regardless of the system, at a glance, to enable your advisors and your support staff to be able to see what someone needs without having to move that data in. Document Template Designer. This is an interesting one. So, strictly speaking, it is a part of OmniStudio. Document generation is a part of OmniStudio in that it leverages the OmniStudio components, but it is a related benefit versus a core component like OmniScripts from FlexCards, as an example. So this is the Document Template Designer. What you will see here is name of the template, pretty straightforward. Then you have your template type. There are 2 template types that you can use for creating a document. You can use a Word document, as you'll see here. And you can also use a PowerPoint document, which I haven't come up with a good use case for. My only thought is if you wanted to like make a presentation with data. I'm not really sure. Along with that is you're going to be your token mapping. There's JSON, which most objects within OmniStudio use JSON data structures and formatting. And you can also use XML, just as an example. I typically recommend sticking with JSON because that's what you will be using elsewhere. So it's easier to not have to switch contexts of how the data is going to be stored and formatted. And then you have the first very strong development-oriented tool of the Document Template Designer, and that is how do you want to map the data? There's 2 ways to do it. You can use an Omni data transform, which means that you'll be using 2 data raptors, one to extract and then one to map. And the other is a custom class. The reason I say that this is incredibly strong for development purposes is that you can go into Apex and write a custom class to extract the data from any number of sources and then manipulate it in the way that you need to within your Apex. Because for as powerful as OmniStudio is, and it very much is, sometimes what it lacks, what it has in speed of UI developments, it lacks in very, very complex data manipulation. A big example of that would be generating transcripts with a document, docgen for transcripts. I've done it both ways. I've done it in an OmniScript, in an integration procedure, and mapped it with data mappers. And it was very complex because the reasons that I mentioned earlier, in that you needed to get a person's name, then you needed to get the semester, or all semesters. Once you got all semesters, you needed to grab each semester and relate the courses back to the semester to keep the structure coherent, so that when you're outputting it into a document, it is in the order you need. And it's totally doable in an integration procedure and data mappers. I have done it. But it's infinitely easier, if you're familiar with Apex, to do it that way, because I can sort and I can group in Apex and I can create a custom object, a custom JSON object within my Apex to pass back to the page, and I can lay it out exactly like I want, which just makes it a bit easier if you are a developer. And so I'm very glad that they have that as an option. Here we do have Omnidata Transform chosen. So this is the data mapper bundle name, get welcome letter mapping, and then this is the extract, the welcome letter JD. So what I will be showing you is a welcome letter that we are using document generation to generate. Here is what, and this is a fresh screenshot. So where I said that they changed the name, they haven't even changed it everywhere. This is an extract. So what we are doing here is we are extracting data from the system so that we can then use it to output to a Word document. These are 3 objects that we are targeting. The first, we are targeting the application, and the extract output path. I'll cover this when we go to the next slide, but that is the, you're effectively renaming the object for when you go to reference it. So from here on out, when I want to reference the application data, I just called it application. The next is scholarship offer. The first one I called waiver offers. The idea being these are tuition waivers. You'll see on my selection criteria, I'm checking where the scholarship offer equals tuition waiver. The next, you'll notice it's another scholarship offer. That's the same object that we pulled from before, but this one I have it called merit offers. And you'll see here that the scholarship type here is recruiting scholarship. This is incredibly powerful because what that means is that you can set up different criteria and return it to a different named object and reference it that way. The reason that is powerful is because what we are doing on our document or on our welcome letter is we are including that information differently if it was a merit offer or a waiver offer, because it matters differently for us for financial aid reasons. So it is different on how we calculate it. You'll see over here, this is the expected data output, these 3 structures. So this is the mapping portion. So this is the output. This is the same extract, but this is the output of that extract. And so you'll see it's application, and then you can actually reference through a lookup. So I can just say application, grab the applicant record, and then just take their first name. And then my output path is first name. I'm doing it for each of these. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And then I don't have a picture of the formulas, but what we're doing in the formulas is that we are taking all of the returned merit data and waiver data, and we are combining it and adding it up to have a merit and waiver amount. But Separately, we also have a merit amount per year because, again, we need that to display differently. And we're able to do that simply because the data itself is separated. So let's look at the template. This is an example of the template that we're using. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy to read. We have date. What you'll see is that anything in brackets is referencing a variable that is passed into this document template. I appreciate that it is easy to read if you do it well. And I guess from a development perspective, that's always true. Do it well and it's easy to understand. But what I mean is it's easy to understand for someone that's not a developer. They can look at this page and they don't have to guess what it is because you were able to rename what it was being output as to just be first name. So it's very clear what it is. There's another easy to read on piece and strong piece, and that is if transfer. So you'll see this if transfer has a caret, and then this if transfer has a pound sign. So the first if transfer is a caret, and then this / if transfer closes this. This is a logic check. What you're doing here with the caret says if it's not true. So if transfer is false, then we need to include this snippet because this is what we want to tell our first year students. This says if transfer is true. So now we're saying if transfer is true, we need to tell them about how strong our transfer program and engagement is. And so what that does is allows you to have a single template for both transfers and first years, and it will switch the verbiage based on context and data. You'll see that used down here as well. If transfer, then we're going to spit out the project class year. If not transfer, if transfer, then we just need to tell them that there is a deadline. And then what you'll see right here is this says if offered. So that is, we are checking if they were offered any waivers or merit-based, any scholarships, merit or waiver. All of this text is a second page or however many for the offers that they got. What that allows you to do is that you don't need to have a second template to output your scholarship offers. They are automatically generated when you create a welcome letter, along with all of the requisite data of how much they were offered. If they had merit and waiver, or if they just had waiver. It really gives you the opportunity to fine tune what they are seeing without having to create 4, 5, 6 different templates to hone in on flexibility. And then again, you'll see right here this / if offered. Then it basically says we're closing this logic. So those of you that understand and work with any sort of logic-based stuff, it's the same with a flow. If you're doing a loop, well, at the end of a loop, what happens at the end of it, you just need to make sure it's closed. So, precursor to a welcome letter is someone needs to apply. What we have here is a OmniScript that we are actively using at the University of Oklahoma to accept applications for our adult degree completion program. The reason that I have this is because I want to highlight a couple things. Earlier, I mentioned that you can embed flex cards into OmniScripts, and you can. And that's what this is right here. This is a flex card displaying education history that this applicant had already shared with us. So we already knew that they had gone to Oklahoma City Community College. So as they're applying, they don't have to fill it in again, because we all want our applicants or our users to not feel like they have to do the same thing and fill out the same information that we already know about them. So surfacing that data shows them, yes, we know this about you and you don't need to enter it again. But likewise, if they realize that it was wrong, or let's say you're not using an education history here, you're using work history. Let's say this is for a specific work study type program, and the students are trying to tailor their work history, and they don't necessarily need ones they've entered before on this new application. This trash can icon allows them to delete it because they see this record isn't what I want here, and they can remove it from this application or delete the record entirely, depending on how you set it up as a developer. In the case of an internship program, you wouldn't want to delete the primary record. You just want to remove it from here. You can do either, depending on how you set up the event listeners. They can add it or remove it, which gives them the flexibility to tell you what they want you to see and that you know them. Now, right here, you'll see the recent current universities. This is where they'd add new universities. So they'd hit add a university, and then they'd fill out the information about it. What's nice is this is a repeatable. So if they hit add university, they can add another one, or however many they need to. You can set limits, or you can leave it open-ended. This one we have set to 5 as an example. You can also, and as you'll see here, this is a custom button. That custom button we set using an image within the CSS, because again, OmniScripts and Flex cards can do what is called pixel perfect design. So if you have a design team and this is how they need it to be for continuity, for style guides of a university, you can do it. Traditionally, it just says add or remove as the button. So we just substitute it for the clickable button to keep the style intact. So here's a fun one. Let's say that you have an advancement team that is in charge of keeping up to date with your alumni. And right now they are inundated because you don't necessarily want to allow the alumni to just update their own data at any point, because you might lose the context data, and you don't want to update good data with bad data. So the alumni put in a request, just a form they have to fill out that says, hey, I need my information updated, which means that your advancement group has to go in and then look at the records and then update them. What if we could surface a flex card on your advancement portal? And if a alumni came in and they realized, oh, my phone number's wrong or my email's not correct, that's not what I use anymore. And you could have anything you want on this flex card. It's just an example. And instead you gave them a button where they just clicked update contact. and you allowed them to request a change systematically. And there's two ways to do this. If in the above example that I gave, we don't want to allow them to just overwrite good data with potentially trash data, like an email that's not valid. When they click update contact, you wouldn't update the contact. You would create a record that your advancement team could use to verify that it's good data before it updates it. Now, what's fun is this is a flex card. And I mentioned earlier, you can embed flex cards in OmniScripts. Well, the inverse is true. You can call OmniScripts from a flex card, which means that you can present this data. You can have it on the screen so they can see the data that is important to them. And then if something has to change with that data, they don't need to go change it elsewhere. They can just click update contact and it will launch an OmniScript to walk them through the process. So let's see that. So this is just for demo purposes, this is on the account page. And what this is looking at is contacts that are related to this account. And it's just surfacing them. So if we had more than one, you'd see more than one. But what's nice is I can embed this flex card into a community. And then the alumni could click on this. They could click, oh, I need to update mine. And this would pop up just in line. Very intuitive. And then they could pick what they wanted. Maybe I need to update my first and last name. Maybe I need to, and this is for the primary contact of an account. So let's flip the script. Let's say that this is now your corporate team, and someone from one of their companies that they're working with, they left. Now they have a new point of contact. Cool. It's as easy as change primary contact. What we have here is a type ahead. So now if they already have the contact in the system, they can just type it in and it automatically fills it out. And when they hit next, it would update it and automatically change Andy to be Leanne. And so between flex cards and OmniScripts, what you're giving, in my opinion, is end users the ability to work with their data in an intelligent way without having to have your development team build out a ton of custom Lightning Web components. Because at the end of the day, guess what? That is effectively how your flex cards and your OmniScripts are output into the system as custom Lightning Web components. But you don't have to build them in code. So your advanced admins can support them and build them. All right, so we've gushed over OmniStudio, but when does it not make sense? When does it not make sense to use? The biggest one in my mind is if you need that form or that process to live outside of Salesforce. And when I say outside of Salesforce, I mean outside of either an experience or the Salesforce platform itself. It is possible. There is a tool called OmniOut. What OmniOut does is it allows you to take your custom code that you've written and export it outside of the system. The issue that it introduces is there is a very significant technical overhead that needs to be maintained and needs to be developed. And most schools either don't want to or can't afford the technical resources, financially or just personnel-wise, to do that. And so if you need something to live outside of your system, maybe OmniStudio is not the right use for it. And then just one-off quick forms. Like let's say you wanted to send out a quick 2-question survey specifically about an event you held last week. I don't think that's worth the development time or the effort to make it function. So, everything I've said, OmniStudio. I've spent the past 2.5 years learning it for higher ed. Let's learn from my pain. OmniStudio records are not metadata. That matters because when you spin up a sandbox, unless it's a full sandbox, they don't go down there. So you need to keep that in mind when you're moving between systems. If you're using sandboxes to develop, you need to plan for, if I'm going to be enhancing this feature, how does that get in my new sandbox? Most of the education or most of the documentation around it is not higher education centric. So you have to take that documentation and you have to figure out what that looks like in Education Cloud. You have to figure out a use case and how it might be used. Totally doable. It's just something I want to call out because it's something that I frequently get asked about. Where do I find examples of where this is used in education? Blogs sometimes. Next is that data mappers can't run in a system context. That can be a problem. What that means is that you can't allow a user to run a data mapper agnostic of their records. So they have to have access to the records that you're trying to have them edit. Not a deal breaker in most cases. It's just something that your security team and your admins need to be aware of when you are using the platform. Question. Okay, let's see.
Questions in the queue there, Reid. Most about how do you get to OmniStudio?
So how do you install it? OmniStudio is only currently a part of industry cloud licenses with an asterisk. That asterisk is that if you have Admissions Connect or Student Success Hub prior to Education Cloud being released, you get an entitlement to the Common Core components, of which OmniStudio is one of. There are others, and some of the other ones are incredibly powerful, like your business rules engines and your data processing engines. But you get Common Core components, but otherwise you have to have an industry cloud license. Devin Siegel
As Dwayne shared, they have it through Admissions Connect. At my school, we had Success Hub, and we were able to get that as an entitlement after going live. So we're in that asterisk that Reid was talking about.
And then can the LWC generated by OmniStudio be persisted through sandbox refreshes? That's a good question. Kind of yes, kind of no. What I mean is the LWC kind of exists, but the OmniStudio component doesn't. So you can't make any changes to the UI of it. You would have to do it in code, and it gets kind of muddied. I don't recommend trying to do it that way because it makes it much muddier. What are the options to deploy from org to org? So without a DevOps product, yeah, IDX is still an option. You can also just export and import. And it takes it into a JSON. So you can just go to the OmniStudio component, click export, and click import. Last time I checked, they're still not available in change sets. I don't know why. I don't know. It's probably because they're not actually metadata, if I had to guess. Best way. The best way is going to be a metadata movement tool, GearSet Capado. If not, I would recommend exporting and importing. Do they have something similar in Marketing Cloud? I'm not really sure I understand the question. When you say, and we can take that offline later, but I guess we're about at time. I'll answer Kathy Zimmerman's really quick. tech skills, I would say base level of development experience is really helpful. I think if you understand and can build flows, then you absolutely are capable of building in OmniStudio. It just might take some time to understand the way that the data functions. From a UI perspective, anyone that has a willingness to learn can absolutely learn it. The data is just a little bit more complex. And Dr. Spencer, we can talk later. I don't think so, but I'd like to better understand your exact use case. Performance issues. Sometimes the page takes a bit to load the designer, but I think that was the goal of their UI changes, is they wanted a more performant UI UI and context. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Reid, for presenting and sharing. Did you have some additional resources to share?
I did, and they will be. This will be in the slide, but this is the Get to Know OmniStudio Trailhead, and then there is Education Cloud OmniStudio Components. I found this documentation buried somewhere deep. It is all of the components that is delivered with OmniStudio for Education Cloud. So all of the OmniScripts, flex cards, data mappers, and integration procedures named, and what the use cases are and what they do, more or less what they do. So I included it, and this is so good for anyone that's developing or trying to extend functionality that was delivered.
Thank you. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.